Gentlemen of the universe, welcome to Trends with Friends. We're covering it everywhere. We're covering a lot of the world today. Yoshi Yokokawa, calling in from Kyoto.
Yes, from the land of sushi.
Yes. Is that a stereotype? What is Kyoto known for? Is it sushi? Like, I know I give you a hard time, but is it sushi?
It's okay. Kyoto's known for shrines or temples and stuff. Sushi is much more memorable. So you got it right always.
But yet I'm coming to a very famous. You've hooked me up with a very famous pizza place. What's it called?
It's called Monk, MONK. That's on the Netflix Chef's Table.
Oh, how many seats?
It doesn't have too many seats. I think it's around less than 20 seats.
And has anybody ever been kicked out of Monk Pizza for weird behavior?
They're getting ready for Howard.
I think even Justin Bieber was okay, even though it seems he was acting weird. So I guess it was okay.
So I'm very excited. I'm bringing the whole family. We're coming to Kyoto. We're taking the bullet train. I'm going to race the bullet train in my BYD electric car. We have a special race going on. Michael Parekh's going to be in a Tesla. I will be in a BYD, and you will be in the bullet train. And when she is going to make it to Tokyo first. And speaking of Harry Carey, welcome Phil Pearlman, who really is looking. I mean, dude,
dashing in black, all of you.
Give me a little. Oh yeah, you're much leaner. Good for you,
dude. I'm gonna do the wine glass half marathon up in Corning. Remember that company Corning during the .com bubble? Corning,
Gorilla Glass.
October. Why don't you come do it with me?
You know what I did once? The heroin half mile.
Oh, dude, that's a good one. Every lap around.
It took 4 days.
You run a mile.
It took 4 days. I lost 30 pounds. It was a different era. It was a different time. And joining from Houston, who also has Find My Glasses, which we put on to do Find My iPhone. This becomes something that you do. This is very, you go, what's the point of having Find My iPhone on if I can't find my glasses? So we wear these ropes. Mike, the ropes have changed my life. I was going through $600-700 worth of Walgreens glasses a month, and then I put the ropes on, and it's a fantastic thing.
No, my wife still argues for getting rid of them, but they're an essential utility thing.
I saw Yoshi do it. Yoshi, you're too young to need the rope. Don't worry about it.
He has no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, I was just confirming.
And we will pass that down. So is it winter? It's winter. It seems like it must be cold there in Kyoto.
Yeah. I'm at close to the hillside, but where you will be, it's not that cold. So don't worry.
Yeah, where I'll be in the Four Seasons, Kyoto.
Yeah, that's an amazing place by the nice river.
Ooh, by the nice river. All right, can't wait. I'm going to May. We're going to get to Yoshi and Alpaca in a little bit. Mike's been all over the world. He's been in India. Phil once went outside this week, so we'll cover that. And I'm in Phoenix. That's Coronado, my home the other way. That's me, the New Yorker piece about me. I think they were thinking about me. That's my unicorn, which hasn't been spotted in about 6 years. And so let's get right into it, Phil. Maybe some Stocktwits stuff. Let's pull up the Cashtag Awards.
Cashtag Awards.
Bring them up, kids. I don't think Alpaca's up for one, but the Cashtag Awards, we launched, and NVIDIA's definitely.
So they're getting like 30, 40, 50,000 votes for these categories. Yeah, if you haven't voted yet, go vote. But it's crazy.
Yeah, so we're throwing these awards April 30th in New York. Some really funny comedians joining. We're going to roast some of our look at this. We're going to roast some of our winners. Some great prizes for our winners. That guy is so funny. Francis, who is a Barstool Boston comedian, went to Harvard. Got Community Member of the Year, Products of the Year, Financial Content Creator of the Year. Easy to go vote on. Stocktwits. All right, what else? Some other big Stocktwits news with the power of AI is our trending tickers. We we now are running. If we can pull up the trending stream, if you click on a trending ticker, and you now can look up why relative to the other stocks. Like as a stock starts to trend when the community or the world is focused on these tickers, it gives you a quick synopsis. So this is something that's been long asked for, and with the power of AI, we're able to just scan the streams and give everybody quick summary. Soon this will come to every ticker, so it'll just help us. I mean, Mike, this is kind of future at Goldman Sachs that you would love, right? Where even a site like Stocktwits becomes, institutional ready because we're taking thousands of messages at a time and trying to figure out why and how it's trending and then summarizing it for users. Pretty cool.
Very cool. Action
oriented.
oriented.
Shout out to Shiv and Boz for putting this in. This is like a killer feature because the internet, like you used to be able to just go to Yahoo Finance, find out what was going on. And, hey, a stock's down 10%. You go to Yahoo Finance, you look up the stock. There's 3 news stories right there in front of you. You can't do that anymore. Everything's so convoluted. Bloomberg has a paywall. And even there's so much going on there and it's so global, you can't even find it. But Yahoo Finance, forget about it. Now you just go to Stocktwits, you hit that fire button. I love this feature. It's a game changer to me. And now I go there, every morning when I look at the futures and I see something moving that I'm interested in, I go right here and just find it in like 2 seconds. Great job, Boz.
And this is going to be part of our API that, like, we had some news a week or 2 ago that Alpaca is partnering us to distribute all this to all the brokerages. So we'll get into that in a minute. Phil, I'm caught up. What do you want to start with?
So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk. Okay, let's start here. Let's start at the most interesting chart in the world. Shout out to Andy Moss, who called it the lag 7. And, this chart right here is, this is like what is that? A bearish pennant, a bearish flag? I don't even know, whatever you call that. It's a bearish flag. And this was after yesterday's close. And we're down 2%. And Tesla's just bringing down the whole market. We'll get into that in a little while.
So is Google. Google paid $30 billion for Wiz, and they're getting hammered. And that's Michael and I are shaking our heads because I think they're like self-inflicting a lot of wounds here at Google, but by not spinning off YouTube and like focusing on their strengths, they're starting to act and look weak. But anyways, Mike and I aren't running the company, though we should be. And so Google's breaking down below 160. So the lag 7, very cool.
Yeah,
I mean, listen, this is, I say this, Phil, and it's not my turn yet, but this is kind of healthy. Like the market needs to survive without, it's like the Nifty 50. The world moves on. These companies are not going away. All the people that are out with they paid their way to the top tick might have been, they paid their way to go to the Washington to watch Orange Man get thrown into the ring. And the stocks have been going down ever fucking since.
Yeah, it's a market of stocks. And so we made new highs with this MAG 7 index beginning to break down and beginning to cut under some of those moving averages that are on this chart. By the way, this is the Roundhill MAG 7 ETF, just to give them a shout out. But it's breaking down. And I think if you look at today, it might be breaking out of this little flag here.
For sure.
And Nvidia's down a little bit ahead of their big GTC conference today.
Got a big conference today. Meta's down 4% today, 5% today. So yeah, these are all breaking down.
Also speaking of the DC, the Trump administration is getting ready their AI policies, which all of these companies have been lobbying in DC for what they want. And chances are it's not going to be as friendly, especially to the hardware companies, because the administration is still focused on US versus China and putting tariffs and tiers on semiconductors and so on. So that will continue to be a headwind.
And I gotta say, I'll let Yoshi chime in because he sees all this from around the world's angle. We've been talking about the money's not coming so much out of the market as it's rotating, right? Like I think Trump would be a lot more nervous if it wasn't just the mags. This is being led by the Mag 7 and growth stocks, right? So Trump's not going to get himself hung for killing Facebook and Google. The people don't really love these. He's not running on Mag 7, even though
But they did try to sell some Teslas in front of the White House.
Good point. Yeah, good point. All right, so I take that back. Who knows what these guys' true strategy is, but it's not helping the Mag 7, even though the Mag 7 sold their souls to get into that room. Yosh, what are you seeing around the 100 or so brokers that you guys power? Like, what do you sense?
Well, I think that like thinking about just these things, like each of the countries, they of course have the popularity votes into these big famous companies. But like I feel like that they continue to be extremely interested in the US markets, right? Like even though like prices are down, like we actually see even more increased demands and the interest how they want to get exposed to the US markets after the president after the the presidential election. So I don't see that like this is really the trend that kind of changes that like the whole trend that we've been seeing. Like obviously like the lot of conversations are happening for sure about like what is the real true intention. But like I think like that's the reason why we're of course like trying to provide the accessibility to not only the US stocks, but reality it's still people will continue to see what's happening in the US and the US market, and that's why Klarna tried to go IPO in the US. Nubank continues to be traded in the US, and I don't think that reality will change in my opinion.
It could be the ultimate. Listen, you got to figure out who the ultimate sucker in the room is, and the ultimate sucker for U.S. stocks, unfortunately, may just be the rest of the world, right? Like this could be a very long, drawn out distribution pattern. That's the cynical me is like America pulls the greatest, whodunit of all time by letting our stocks get owned by everybody in the world. So in the end, U.S. is doing a good job, like with Klarna and with Nubank, of getting these companies to want to list in the U.S., which forces U.S. stocks to be won and owned by the rest of the world. Phil, what else do we see here? So we got the Lag 7. I don't know what turns that around, Mike. Like, what do you see? Is there anything there that the trend is now clearly looking down? And I think Tesla is the poster child for this trend, right? Like China and BYD. I don't know if this is the point, but if we were to pull up BYD,
all-time highs.
All-time highs. Ohm wrote a great piece about that. We've had him on the show about how China just has such scale around this. Their tech stack is, we're farting around over here. I think Elon has known this, right? And this is why it was so important that he had his cars being sold by Donald Trump on the White House steps. It's not like he's oblivious to this. I don't think he can win China. He knows he can't win Europe. So Elon's left with a growth company that is not growing. It's going in reverse, and maybe never to see the light of day again in a country like China, especially with Trump being so nationalistic. So I think there's a lot of people trapped in this stock. Now, Michael, when we talked about this last year, you had the same opinion as you do now that you were not bullish. The stock went off and doubled, or not double, but up 50 to 80%, and now we're below those numbers. I think this is the ultimate trap. Phil, what do you see here?
Yeah.
Well, BYD's making all-time highs, and Tesla's just getting crushed. And I think that brand is a very difficult thing to, if you destroy your brand in a country where you sell a ton of product like Germany, when does it come back? It's not like you can just turn it around. So it's a big secular loss to the company potentially, and that they're just going to have to deal with Go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
No, I mean Tesla is Elon. It has been, and that's been a point of distinction. This company didn't spend a dollar on marketing, and like any auto company, and it benefited when Elon went from 0 to 200 plus million followers, etc. And now it's seeing the other side of that trade. The other thing is, I've been on the show on a fundamental basis saying, look, Tesla is the mother of all meme stocks, and that was when the stock was doing what the earlier highs and ahead of that. Now it's down 30-40%, whatever, but it's still at 800 million or whatever, a billion, whatever the market cap is. It's still at least 2-3 times all the auto companies in the world combined. And then all the things that people are hanging their hat on, which is robots and humanoid robots. I'm excited about robots. That's 20 years, next 10 to 20 years before we 5 to 10 years before we get to anywhere close to the kind of numbers that Elon is talking about, which are millions of humanoid robots working in our homes and offices and so on. Just because technology takes a while to build from a bottom-up basis, the data for robots doesn't exist, et cetera, et cetera. I can talk about it ad nauseum on a secular bottom-up basis. Similar thing, the robo-taxis, very exciting. Waymo, Google is making headway. Other companies are. China has its own self-driving software. BYD, we were talking about, they just introduced their God's Eye self-driving. It's working in China because China as a unified market has accommodated all that. Robo taxis are also a fair bit away. If you're excited about automated driving, look at Uber. In my view, don't look at Tesla.
Yeah, I'm long Uber.
Yeah. So, and we can talk about the business model aspects of that in detail. So the things that people are talking about as Tesla is beyond the car piece are still much further away than people think, and it's not reflected in the valuation even at these levels on a bottom-up basis. That's from me as an analyst.
That's from 1990s tech analyst and still as relevant as ever, Michael Parekh. So I'm with you. We're going to go to Yoshi on this. What he's seeing in Middle East and Japan. Like obviously, where is the sentiment across hundreds of brokers? Where you see it as a consumer in Japan, and how the Japanese people look at Elon and in this election and the product, and what other cars are interesting.
Yeah, I think like it continues to be very much the volatility sucks up the people's attention as well, even though that the market is like down. But I think like another thing that we need to be thinking about, because like we work with like hundreds of the broker dealer in 40 different countries, and that's like targeting retail investors in different countries. And I think like how they're thinking about is actually probably very different from the how the Goldman Sachs tech analysts can think about it in the institutional basis. So I think like that's a little bit of the different nuance that I think we'll continue to see, and that is a reason why that I'm very much optimistic that like the people in the all over the world continue to see that Tesla and then all those other stocks in the US to be something that they want to be exposed, and that's the reason why we're getting so much interest and business demands from the providers of those businesses, like brokers and banks in outside the United States. So at least that's what we see. And obviously like price, if this continues to goes down to the level that really doesn't make sense even in the bottoms up fundamental level, which I don't think, like as Michael was saying, like it's really not the case, right? So maybe this is like that a lot of people, at least like from outside the US, maybe thinking that this is a like right opportunities to buy. That could be coming, because I think it's only not too long. We still just started it in like last few months. So I think like that's we definitely want to see how it's going to turn around, or like how it's going to be towards the end of the year.
I mean, my as watching Stocktwits, and I float out some jokes or whatever about Elon, or you take a shot at Elon. The sentiment is just as bad as it ever was. The whatever you call them, the fans. Listen, the product has always been good, but there's signs, right? Like with the charging stations, there's signs with this behavior. There's signs with the country. Well, I don't think they've connected a couple dots that the left or whoever is now mad at Musk. They own the stock. Like I think the big disconnect is there is disconnecting Vanguard and their 401ks from them painting their friend's Tesla is if they were to just look at how they've invested in their 401k, they own the goddamn stock. So like what you're painting, the Tesla and you're shooting it up at the station, but you haven't even gone into your own portfolio and voted where it matters most, right? When people dollar cost average into their Vanguard or VU, whatever you own, Phil, they're buying a piece of Tesla. And it's one of my biggest beasts with the whole industry is the investors don't really know what they own, which comes back to like guys we've had on the show where you can unpick stocks. Like the number one thing Americans need to realize how tied they are to these companies in the Fortune 500, and the fact that their best way to vote is not to give them their money on a monthly basis. You want to own Tesla, you own Tesla. That's one of the great freedoms. You are mad at Tesla. One of the great freedoms is you can vote by saying, not putting my money in that every month. Mike, what were you going to say?
I just want to add one more thing, just like on a bottom-up basis. I track a bunch of data, not just financial on Tesla and the auto companies, but the other thing is go on YouTube or TikTok and look at any auto blogger, and basically look at what they've been putting up over the last 3-4 months. Almost every video is reviewing Chinese cars, BYD, dozen others, and just in 30 seconds they'll show you, why if they could buy one, this is what they would buy. It's like we can't have it because we have tariffs on China, and we have, Trump is saying 100% tariffs on auto cars, etc. But if we were allowed to buy Chinese cars like we were allowed to buy Japanese cars in the 60s and 70s, everyone would buy the Chinese cars. Why? Because they're actually making them a lot better, not just self-driving, but just the features and the price, right? I mean, BYD is famous. They've got a EV that you can buy with all the bells and whistles for 10 grand in China and a lot of other countries. It's the people who are experts on this saying those are the better cars.
Are they legal to drive in this country? Could you go there or just pay the tariff, or go to some other country where they sell them and bring them here?
Yeah. You can custom import onesie twosies, but it's very, very tough. Service, all of those things. They're not allowed in the US yet. But I have friends who go to Mexico and get one or two and drive them across the border, that sort of thing. You can buy them in Mexico, and by the way, China is making headway, as they would be expected to do, in a whole bunch of developing markets with their cars. Again, on a bottom-up basis. So they're going after the Kia and the Hyundai's markets in places like India and Africa and in South America, etc. And they'll be here. And the flip that I'm just anticipating is enough people, mainstream people, watch these YouTube videos and say, "Oh my God, this is what I want," and they call their congressman and say, "Guys, we need the better car. This is actually good for the world. Being able to buy a better product for your hard-earned money is forget words like globalization. It's just you got to get good value for your money, and we, as the biggest economy in the world, if we allow these cars to come and be sold here, it's actually better for us. It makes us better competitively long term. It is the better solution. And yes, some of them will be made here. You can contort policies for that. That's great. But when we cannot shut ourselves off from what they're doing. They are the largest car market, so they're building the best cars for themselves.
They're building cities that make these that are bigger than, I saw Shilshed, they're bigger than the Denver airport, bigger than San Francisco. They have cities to manufacture BYDs. So the key is, it goes back to what Bill Gurley said a few weeks ago, which is, hey man, or no, what's his name, Gerstner, is that it's coming. Like, you want to fucking stick your head in the pillow. This isn't the same as the Japanese, who are just better at culture and building these. This is just a brute force, a technological movement and tech stack that's coming. Now, we can try and fake like it's not coming. Same with AI, with DeepSeek. Who cares how much money they spent? Like, that was the original headline. How much money? How about it's just did pretty damn good?
Better. It was better.
Yeah, I don't even want to get into better.
And
How
then
about
Manus
it
was
hit
better
number one in
agents.
the App Store? Like, why are we talking about how much money they spent? Let's talk about specs and about the fact that my kids do it. Now you throw in the fact that TikTok may or may not be Chinese, but it is. And now they're going to be marketing BYD. So how are you going to stop this brute force of this stuff? And you got to give the people what they want. And Elon's acting like the first time, like he doesn't have the best product, right? And if you have the best product, you don't need a car salesman like Donald Trump selling your product, who hated the product when he was representing coal. And so you got 1 minute where Trump's talking about bringing back coal mines, and the other side of his mouth, he's pitching Teslas. The ridiculous, and again, this is not political because the Democrats are idiots, but because they can't take advantage of all this nonsense. But like Elon's weak, right? And his political ambitions were based on something way beyond political ambitions. It has to do with Tesla, and I think it's not working. And so, anyways, it's a very interesting moment because the chart speaks for everything. If we pull back up that Tesla chart, I mean, it should bounce here, but there's a case to be made where it just cuts right through all this nonsense because there's so much negative momentum in the actual sales of the business. Right. And what are
this becomes a pretty big spot here with the low at 222 that it made a week and a half ago, and then all sort of this churning around in last summer and autumn
But
before
Phil,
the big
no
breakout.
bounce. We filled those gaps from the Trump rally where we were talking about it and the stock kind of shot up. So we filled every gap. There's been no bounce. The market has kind of relieved its oversold condition the last 3-4 days, while the lag stocks, the Langs or whatever we call them,
no fund manager outside of the U.S. can go near it either, because everybody hates them. Like if you're in Canada, if you're in Europe,
or if you're a pension in Europe, you're not going to be able to show this on your books. So I don't think anyways, the markets have a great way to fuck you, even if you think you're the smartest, richest man in the world. And I think the ultimate cool factor here is the market just doing its thing. Musk is.
The market is not intimidated.
Yeah, the market is not intimidated.
Let's catch up with. Let's talk to Yoshi. Let's talk about Alpaca.
Yep. Yeah, but like I think like looking at this chart, right? Like I felt like this reminds me of this whole chart. Like you remember like during the COVID, like everything went up, and then like tech stuff comes back exactly the same line. It just like really like reminds us of that chart, right? Like when that happened, basically risk capital basically evaporated, but like in the reality, it didn't evaporate. It just like sat on the sideline, and then like it became like super risk averse. Like I'm wondering like for this case, like you're talking about like BYD. And of course, like BYD continues to go up. Like, do you see that like money just circulating? But like at the same time, it's not that easy to have exposure to the BYD as much as you can have exposure to Tesla stocks, right? Like as you're saying, like you basically have the subscription every month, like automatically without your choice that you're buying into Tesla if you're inside of the SPY or whatever. So like I think like that's what it's so interesting how like that chart looked like, because it was really the same how the PayPal stock went up and like came down, or like the Square went up and came down, same thing as Robinhood. It was very similar shape.
But in the end, the company has to grow, right?
Yeah.
Like whether you're Michael Parekh as Goldman Sachs analyst, or me, a technical / catalyst driven person, or you with your own strategy, a growth stock only becomes a growth stock when it grows. And right now, it's very hard to go from this type of negative sentiment combined with incredible competition, combined with an incredibly high valuation that Elon has, combined with you could not get more free press than Elon has, forgetting how he's abused it and used it probably improperly, and it hasn't helped him. What is it that could get it turned around? The only thing that will work is product and sales. Now, Elon's had great product, like the Tesla. People don't buy Teslas because they're shit product. But with the new Cybertruck, what is it? I read the glue's coming off and the panels are coming off. And you know what? No rich guy who's bought a Porsche or a Rolls Royce has to worry about taking it to the restaurant and having dick pics drawn on it. Like, you know what? It's just not fun. Like, it's not, you're not trolling anybody when you've got to wash your car, a dick pic off your car, or clean it up. Like, that's never happened in the history of luxury cars. And that'll change people's opinions pretty fast because it becomes a headache. Go ahead, Mike.
No, and compete in the marketplace. Don't
Yeah.
use your edge. I mean, don't sell it on the White House lawn. Don't take
Yeah.
SpaceX and Starlink and basically say, oh, we're going to force the FAA to use Starlink instead of a contract from Verizon.
Yeah.
If your product's that great, just let the product win in the marketplace. Don't force the White House to replace the internet in the White House, which they just did today with Starlink.
Come on.
Yes, it's talk about crony capitalism, etc. I mean, if you are the best, richest companies and best company product, let your product shine in the marketplace, compete. Do not take the inside advantage on these things and beat your competitors everywhere on with unfair advantages. That's not the American way.
Well, he's also confirming what his competitors have always said about him, that he cheats. Like, if you don't need to cheat, don't do it at the highest stage. But anyways, God bless. It's what's left of a free market, Phil. All right, let's pull up Alpaca and let's really talk. This is an incredible company that has just built a better product.
Yoshi, tell us about the company.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, I'm the co-founder CEO of Alpaca. We are building brokerage infrastructure, platform, and API, and also the self-clearing broker dealer and the custody as well. So it's a very boring, old school business that has existed more than 100 years. So it's going to continue to exist more and more. Our key area is like really supporting more types of the Robinhood type of the applications across the globe. So these are just some of the examples that the companies that's we work with or built using our API and platform. Meet us from Turkey, Sarwa from UAE, Sai from Singapore, In Money from India, Dime from Thailand, and Abiyan from the Saudi Arabia. It just list goes on. But like I think like what's really interesting is that I think like the same as Stocktwits, like everyone is all want to be connected to the market, and then at the same time, the language and the culture do matter for those people who want to be connected to the market. So what we have really realized is that each of the country needs their own version of the Robinhoods or own versions of wealth fronts to be able to have accessibility to the global markets. And then like the capacity and the ratio of the US stock market has been continued to increase. Like I think now it's like more than 60% compared to like 5-10 years ago. And despite of this negative press against Tesla and everyone, so everyone still continue to have like a good exposure, good experience from the all different countries, and each different countries needs their own best experience, like Robinhood did to the United States market. So that's really what we do. And we of course have the very simple business that do the whole clearing of the stocks and options and fixed income, all those other asset classes for big banks and existing broker dealers across the globe. Of course, that's a big business as well, but we're at the same time very much excited about seeing these kind of new innovations, new companies, new applications coming up from so many different countries. So that's why we work with the countries that are so diverse, like these partners that we're seeing here.
So, Phil, what's so interesting about Alpaca? I think you started the company, 2017, 16?
Yes, 17.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, social leverages and investors. Who are some of the other investors? Yoshi, can you talk about some of the latest investors?
Yeah. So, we work closely with the Canadian headquarter global fintech fund called Portage, and Sagard Holdings, Spark Capital, backed, Plaid and Twitter
eToro.
early days, and
eToro.
then in the eToro as well. And then we work with the multiple, like the global family office type, type of the investors. Unbound, which is the Mittal family of the Airtel of the India. Horizons Ventures, which is a Li Kai-sheng from Hong Kong. and then 850 Al Touk family, Deraya Financial from Saudi Arabia. So yeah, we have like multiple investors globally. So it's really fortunate to have the partners everywhere in the world.
So, Phil, what's so interesting here is if we look at just these 10, there's probably a couple hundred. But
Yes,
and
couple
Social Leverage is
hundreds.
also an investor in GoTrade, which is Jakarta and India. But the thesis here, guys, was before I came up with the degenerate economy was like if you build it, they will come. Robinhood would onboard millions of people. The thesis behind Alpaca was, power 1,000 Robin Hoods, right? And no brokerage. If you go back to Schwab and E Trade, none of I think SoftBank maybe, Mike. There was Yahoo Japan or eToro, E Trade Japan, right, Yoshi? But really,
Yes.
no one's been able to build a global brokerage, and so the idea was, let the local entrepreneurs build their Robinhood. Now, Robinhood slowly with tokenization, they've opened up London, and we could strategize about what they're talking about, but won't right now. But really, you've got local entrepreneurs that love fintech powering these. I think Lightyear is Japan, and so Midas is the biggest one, maybe in Turkey.
Yeah, Midas is actually I think like they're now one of definitely the biggest broker dealers in Turkey. They're definitely the biggest account opening numbers every day in Turkey.
It's fascinating. So people want
Yeah.
this, which is what's so fascinating. What's going on with the United States? How we're treating the markets here, just at a time when the rest of the world wants to sip from the
Yes.
fire hose that is U.S. Markets. We're
Yeah.
taking a shit on them every day and breaking all kinds of norms. Selling Teslas on the White House, launching Trump coins. This is why people go, "Howard, why are you so mad?" I'm like, because we've invested for 20 years in bringing one of the greatest function of the US capitalism system, access to both capital and investing and liquidity. And we're just taking a giant turd on all of that, just as like technology. It's kind of like Elon taking a turd on the world and we're taking a turd on what the greatest freedom is. The idea that people could put a few of their dollars in an American company that is a growth company. Phil, you're going to chime in there.
Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, we have Lewis Johnson on, and we're talking about de-globalization theme, which is a strong theme in this country, and yet technology is moving in the exact opposite direction. And you are doing something that is so global. I mean, you're taking a cable and you're plugging it into the whole rest of the world. And my question is, Yoshi, I mean, there's no going back, right? You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then I think like internet happened the same way, and then like the DeepSeek and all the AI technology as well. This is the same thing. Like the money movements, the all the global money rails. I think that's the reason why like everyone's talking about and excited about stable coins, right? And that's really just like trying to make the whole money movements globally to be much faster, while deglobalizations continues to happen at the tops down level from the political aspects. And that it makes sense, right? Because I think like the politicians and like leaders have to firstly care for the internal people, which is the residents and the citizens. And then I think about this a lot because like we work with so many different countries, and then we deal with so many different regulators from each of the country. And then those regulators actually think like that. They think and to protect their citizens. They don't care about like how the other people thinks from the outside. So like I definitely like kind of feel empathy about like how they're thinking. And I think like that's what's happening for sure in the the existing like leadership of the United States as well. Of course, like chart doesn't he's not supporting what their intention may be right now. But I think like I think about this a lot, thinking about each of the 40 different regulators that we deal with in the world. They're thinking very seriously about protecting their citizens through investor protection and thinking about anti-money laundering and all those things.
Yep. Michael, any thoughts here?
No, I think APIs is one of the core ways we've seen over the last 20 years to deliver services. And I think what Alpaca is doing is extraordinary in terms of the opportunity set for the world to program stuff for their universe, their markets, whether it's on the public, on the private side, etc. And it's a very robust infrastructure platform that they're building, which is really cool to see.
I'll give you another example. If we pull back up all his partners there, Max or Keith, we can see that like Yoshi and I have worked together forever. And again, we don't understand at a scale of a Facebook or a Twitter, but they don't need Facebook in these apps, right? So what Stocktwits did is we built our APIs like around trending and Phil and our streams and our news, and built a Stocktwits Everywhere API that now Alpaca can offer to all these brokers. So, you set up a brokerage in the past, let's call it GoTrade, and GoTrade's going to be going live with their stuff. And they got to go buy their data. Then they got to go, Yoshi, how does it work? Then they got to go buy their news. And it all ends up being the same nonsense. Everybody buys Reuters, and everybody buys, Bloomberg News or WSJ or wherever they get their news from. And everybody's looking at the exact same stories, which is how we got in all these trouble from the first place. There's no critical thinking. There's no unique way to separate yourself from every other brokerage. And so now with Stocktwits' Everywhere product, you can bring in all of our hundreds of, millions of users and sentiment and community if they want, and have a whole new, really fresh look at how the world is talking about things. So this is where, replumbing, being open is better than being closed. So, I mean, Yoshi, does that make sense to you? And
definitely. Like
I was bugging Yoshi to do this for a while, and we didn't fully get it, but now I think we're.
Yeah. And I think the key is that really opening, right? That's the reason why we use the word specifically open, because it's very neutral wording, that it's open or closed. And I think those sentiment and then very specific data like that, each of these countries don't have that much of the information. We are filled with those company information and US stocks, and as we've been seeing, the Elon Musk and all those people are getting hammered. It's not really widely distributed information unless you're in Canada or very specific targeted tariffed countries. If you think about Japan, Japanese people are not really having that kind of similar, for example, emotion towards the what the Elon Musk or Trump is doing, for example. So that's a very interesting part, and that's the reason why I think these sentiment data is real. So that needs to be really get exposed to the those country and those investors in those countries to see the real stuff.
Go ahead, Michael.
No, and Yoshi and I talked a little bit about this in India, but on top of all this, the AI opportunity is also a very targeted opportunity for building add-on elements to your core business, and in a very thoughtful, targeted way. And that's also a very exciting piece that's on top of what you guys are doing. So you may want to touch on that, Yoshi.
Yeah, I think the AI. I think that Michael, you're going to talk more about this, but AI really allows not only the developers to connect to the API. When we started this in 2017, launched the API, we saw a lot of programmer traders building on top of our API, building their algorithmic trading, building kind of the Robinhood clones, even in the United States. But now we start seeing is that those accountants and then financial professionals who don't code, because they can just use ChatGPT and then just create the agents and just connect to our API. So we suddenly see this influx of new segment, and then we see a bunch of the YouTubes now using ChatGPT and Alpaca doing that kind of stuff now.
And what do you go ahead, Phil?
Go ahead, Howard.
I was just going to say, what are you seeing? So with the roadmap wise, whatever you could share, is it option? You just launched options. Is it crypto? What's the most interesting thing you've seen from a certain country versus U.S. stocks? Is there anyone that's just not as interested in U.S. stocks that surprise you and all they want is options? And then I have this term called degeneracy, the degenerate economy. What is the most degenerate economy out there? Is it in Asia? Is it in the Middle East? Where are you seeing some trends that you could share?
Yeah, I think like the while like like the U.S. Stock market market valuation ratio continues to expand. It is also true like each of those like local markets are getting even more aggressive, how they can grow better and more. So for example, like there's a company called Daria Financial, which is the biggest independent broker dealer in the GCC Middle East region. They did the IPO like last week. I think it was like $400 million US dollar allocation. It was like 164 times oversubscribed. Like that's how like the crazy that a lot of retail investors are in the region. And then of course like the India, that's an extremely active community. Like the Shiv was sharing a lot of insights there. FNO futures and options has been extremely big. Of course it's got really toned down, but like that's a little bit different market from the United States. So yeah, we see like the India, we see like GCC markets is getting very active. And then like Indonesian markets, because of the some of the capital flight protection has been in place in those countries. So like local markets has been growing in a much faster pace than the US in some of the countries like that.
Huh. And what's your take on options in crypto in how important it is for these other countries?
Yeah, I think like crypto is becoming even more important, like especially European countries, right? And then like I think like I would see like even more like the expansion of the crypto in the Europe. And of course like I think like Trump is trying to make sure that that happens in the US as well. It's a funny news was I think last week India like gave some kind of crypto license to Coinbase, which is super weird, right? Like I was talking with like the all the CEOs with those fast growing Indian fintech companies, and everyone was like scratching their heads.
Because
So
why?
there's
Because why?
because like the Indian regulators always don't like and continue to not liking crypto,
Oh,
and then suddenly there's a news breaks out that Coinbase got some kind of license in India for crypto, which is extremely like in a way random and like out of blue. So but that's why like how much of the crypto, and then I think that's going to be really getting accelerated. And so we've been building the parps trading crypto exchanges, and we have been offering the spot crypto accessibility as well. So that's continued to be the case for us. And options trading, it is really important because what was so interesting is that because it's of course like very high revenue products, but in reality, like the CEO founder of the leading UAE trading app called Sarwa, I was talking to Mark. It is actually really about hedging, because like options can be used for hedging, and then right now because of this volatility, the needs of the options instruments to the retail investors are actually extremely useful if that's educated in a right way. So that's what we started hearing more, that we don't really want to talk about and push options for the high leverage, but we want to talk about options for the hedging purpose and the long tail risk.
yeah.
So that's kind of trend that we started seeing as well.
Yeah, and this goes, Phil, to when we bring up charts of CME, CBOE, ICE. People talk about Polymarket or DraftKings, and my degenerate economy is full of these companies because they are like, who are the really big beneficiaries. You always have to look at the interface is Alpaca and the customers, but downstream, who's really printing money from the degenerate economy is, I don't own the Nasdaq, but it's the Nasdaq, the ICE, the CME, the CBOE, the true market makers, right? The data companies, the companies like Stocktwits that'll be arms dealing sentiment, and I mean we're way down on the site, but like you have to start thinking about who powers all this, right? And I don't think people have done a good job of that. They think about degenerate economy and they think it's just DraftKings and Robinhood and no, but it's Uber, it's DoorDash, it's CME, CBOE. So this is just what's at stake. When we play with trust, like I think part of my big beef with both parties is we're messing with trust, and when you mess with trust, you're going to wreck the one great the machine that like allocates capital efficiency, which is the markets. Now, the markets are only probably efficient twice a year, where you look at Tesla today and you go, the $500 print a month ago really makes no sense now that you know what's been going on. So yeah, the markets don't always make sense, but when you look at it over a long period of time, you go, well, that fucking makes sense. That blip might not make sense to me. What happened? And you can go tell the story, but when you look at Tesla's chart and you take out the blip, you go, this kind of makes sense. Sales aren't going anywhere. The guy's a little bit insane. The stock's overvalued. It's actually doing pretty damn good considering. And that's how investors need to think, right? Is that like the markets don't always make sense, but if you take enough of a step back, they really do make sense. And right now, Phil, with the chart of the day and the lag 7, we're starting to see how slowly they're starting to price in that maybe this little nifty 50 era could be over. And when you think about BYD in China, and you think about how we're behaving, and you think about de-globalization, and you think about growth, and you think about the Mag 7 just competing against each other, some of these charts will start making sense to you. Whereas other people are like, oh, I'm going to buy the dip. This is the greatest dip to buy. And so you have to kind of always think about maybe what's the one time you're wrong buying the dip could be the beginning of an end. So you always have to be willing to kind of like second guess yourself. All right, what's next, Phil?
Well, it's nice to know that degeneracy is a global phenomenon. And so I'm very happy about that, and as suspected. But let's talk. We have Michael here and Yoshi here. So let's talk about vibe coding, because I think we have two experts coming from different directions. It's beautiful. So Michael, you wrote a post recently. Use the term vibe coding. I brought it up last night at dinner. My 16-year-old son, totally aware, totally knows what's going on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about like what's vibe coding? How does it fit in with AI? What are the implications? And then Yoshi, what are the implications as you see them? So go ahead, Michael.
Sure. I mean, it's a very meme worthy coined word that was coined by Andrei Karpathy, who was like one of the original chief scientists at Tesla on self-driving. He was ex OpenAI. He's doing his own startup now. But this guy is a coder's coder. If you Google him, he has a huge YouTube channel, millions of followers for coders, and he coined this term a little while ago, basically saying that as a programmer, his whole profession for the millions of programmers is about very meticulously writing code, thinking through from point A to point Z how to write whatever the thing you want the thing to do. And large language models now allow you to do this automagically by just prompting the system, and it'll write code for you. It's very good at it. It's one of the hottest vertical applications of AI out there. Copilot for Microsoft, Replit. There are private companies. Cursor is one of the hottest coding AI companies out there with the fastest ARR growth, over 100 million in revenue in the shortest period of time. And vibe coding for the programmers means being able to, on an ad hoc basis, create huge amounts of code just by prompting or talking to the LLMs, then looking at the code, running it without too much effort, and then fixing it as you need to customize it, etc. So that's what Andre was talking about for his tribe of coders. But it also has big implications for non-coders, that any one of us can go in and basically program by just talking to the thing, not know too much about coding, and do essentially customized applications and software, essentially software for one. With a little bit of effort, without even having to hire a programmer, there are lots of YouTube videos about people generating games with the latest versions of ChatGPT, the latest version of Claude from Anthropic, etc. And if you use the specialized tools, you can do even cooler things. So vibe coding is basically this notion of this ability to do software with AI that dramatically expands the market to whatever the total addressable market. And instead of having millions of coders, we're talking about tens of millions to hundreds of millions, eventually billions of people who will be able to custom code their applications with these tools automagically, and then get coders to help you just tune it as needed, and it'll just get better from here. So that's what that phrase is about, and it's a current trend in Silicon Valley about what could be done with vibe coding. And young people, you're right, they're adapting this to like fish to water. You know, your son, as an example, my nephew, 23 years old, he's just finishing his master's in software engineering. He wants to be product design, and he can now iterate using these tools where normally would have had to code the various ideas about how to manifest a certain product online, etc. He can use this to try 6 different versions in a very short period of time, and then play with it, and submit that for his um, coursework, for his job eventually, etc. So it's a new world for young people, especially, not dissimilar to when we had, before spreadsheets and after spreadsheets with a PC. All of a sudden, we could now generate uh, what if scenarios, or what if we bought XYZ company with a lot of debt. We could model it with the help of software, and that's what vibe coding does.
Go ahead, Yoshi. Thoughts?
Yeah.
I'm interested in your thoughts in terms of, running Alpaca, and how, you know, an idiot like me potentially could take your API and build something with it without having any idea how to code whatsoever.
Yeah, so I think, like, the whole purpose, that reason why Alpaca we focus on the API instead of like not having any mobile interface or web interface is because of this very reason. Because like we thought about, like, interface, like interaction with the world, like it used to be only face to face, right? Because you even didn't have a phone, and phone, like, got invented and you started doing over the phone call, so it became only voice. And then there's a web browser, so like, there's a new interface to the world, looking at the computer screen. And then mobile came, so it became like even smaller. So what is the next step is, we were always thinking, this basically the programs or code, piece of the code that becomes the actual real interface. And then that is something that interact with the world, which is the basically the API. So that's a kind of like more of the super longer term thesis that we had, how the society will change. That's what we're thinking in 2017, 2018. At that time was a little bit different, because like it was like a lot of coding schools, like it was like kind of trend, everyone with the software developer. So that was like kind of, the how it gets to like everyone is able to basically automate and create programs to interact with the API. But reality, this AI actually pushed that even farther, even compared to the basically Lambda school that was creating a bunch of the software developers, because you don't have to be a software developer, because this vibe coding, you are now, everyone is a coder. Everyone is able to automate stuff, create a piece of the code and programs that interact automatically with the API. Hence, the needs of the API becomes even more important for every single action that interacts with the world, anything. And investing is one of that. Financial services is one of that. It's not only that, like every single piece of it would need the API. So like, actually the importance of the word of the API will increase. There was like some kind of hype around 2016 to 2018, because like Plaid and Stripe, but like it kind of toned down. But now, because of this like vibe coding and AI LLM, I think it's going to actually the word of the API hype will probably come back up. That's how I'm seeing it.
Wow.
I think we might have lost Howard.
That's a one story that, like, Phil, you were talking
No,
about.
but the one thing,
There you
I'll
go.
say. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Michael. I just want to
No,
mock Howard. Every time I have a problem with my internet, he's very quick to bust my balls. So, okay, go ahead, Parekh.
No, I was just saying, on top of just the doing ad hoc coding, what Yoshi is talking about is also very key. That these systems can also help us harness APIs automatically as well, in addition to coding, and create connectivity. That is another tailwind, because the world for the last 10 or 20 years, and especially the last 5 or 6 years, totally runs on API. OpenAI is one of the largest API driven companies. The prototype poster child is Amazon AWS, and it's so very powerful. And what Yoshi's doing with his company with APIs, Stripe obviously was created on payments or just via APIs. So vibe coding, large language model driven coding is also going to harness these APIs in a mass way and a very easy to use way.
Awesome. So let's before we wrap up, let's just take, because we mentioned it earlier, we're not going to get to a whole list of winners. I mean, gold's making all-time highs, Berkshire's making all-time highs, but let's throw CME up. Let's at least do one of them, because CME, because we mentioned it earlier, Howie mentioned it earlier, so let's give it a shout. CME's up today, by the way. I mean, the Nasdaq, Qs are down like 1.8, 1.9%. And the S&P's down more than 1%. CME's up again today. This is from yesterday's close. But what's working now? There's always something working here, and there is significant amount of dispersion in the market. And so we love the fact that here's one that's working for you, and it's just simple. I mean, they're just doing, and Yoshi pointed to it perfectly. I mean, risk, it's not just, it's a combination. You got your degenerates who trade options, and you got your risk managers who trade options. It's like a perfect storm for these guys. Howie, you're back. You got any last thoughts about CME before we wrap up?
Yeah, it's part of, like I said, it's part of my for a long time. It's acted like a hedge here. I didn't expect it to act like a hedge as Apple and Google go down and DraftKings goes down and Robinhood goes down. But I think they are the pipes, as the tech people talk about poly market, there's a child comparison to like what the real poly market is. This is the grown adults version of poly market, right? This is where actual money is changing hands into trillions of dollars. And they work for both sides. This is what creates, or this is one of the great American companies out of Chicago, started like this. Now it's all electronic. And this powers, this is the picks and shovels of what Yoshi and I and everybody in fintech has been, or at least in the trade fi. This is the picks and shovels. But so is ICE. If you were to pull up a chart of ICE, and if you were to pull up a chart of CBOE in the NASD, your mic's off, Phil. But if you
CBO is also close to all-time highs, but not like this one. I mean,
no, not like this, because the Merc really is one of the bare bones profiteers of all this stuff. All right, what else you got?
We're just going to wrap it up there because we're past 12 o'clock, and we missed a couple winners. I mean, we all know Berkshire's breaking out. We all know gold is just making all-time highs. So we'll just wrap it up. We'll come back to winners next week because there are winners in this market. But anyway, great to have Yoshi on. Michael, you want to have last word? Oh, I thought you had. I thought you had something to say.
Yeah, the other thing is just this week, Jensen is going to do his keynote in a couple of hours at the GTC. We're going to have a lot of NVIDIA news this week in terms of the next generation chips, going from Blackwell to Rubin over the next 3 or 4 years. This is a company on track to do over 300 billion in revenues. It was a tenth of that just 2 or 3 years ago. So the NVIDIA train continues this week.
Could he say anything today that changes complexion of this market?
I think he will highlight that his roadmap is very, very robust, that the need for his chips, not just for training, but for inference, is basically going to be very clearly NVIDIA for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, that DeepSeek and everything from China helps them. And maybe he will touch on the fact that the US government and the administration needs to be balanced in their view of how to regulate foreign demand, overseas demand for US chips and infrastructure, because the US companies are the leadership companies. And right now, the more curbing we do, the more we're taking out of our long-term advantage. And so he may highlight that piece as well. But no, I expect him to talk about his roadmap for his chips. I expect him to talk about robotics. I expect him to talk about small AI as a big opportunity for them, inference as being a big opportunity for them, and AI data centers as being a huge opportunity, along with sovereign AIs, because every country in the world, as Yoshi said, just like in fintech, they want their own financial markets automated, etc. They want their own AIs, and and Nvidia is the biggest one. They're the north of $10 billion in revenues on sovereign AIs. So he'll talk about all of those things, and I think that should give a little bit comfort in this environment where people are worried about a lot of the macro headwinds on the lag sevens from the mag sevens.
Yeah, really interesting moment in time, guys. All right, thanks Yoshi for chiming in from Kyoto. Let it go to sleep. What time is it there?
1 a.m.
Okay, you're out. All right, buddy, get some sleep. We'll see you in a few months. Phil,
Yep.
thanks for doing this. See you, everybody.
Adios, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.